My buddy Tom is in the process of downsizing and moving into a smaller home, and recently gave me several items for free. Said, hey, do you want them? You can have them. One of those items was this observing chair that he had, and I said, hell yeah, I'll take it. Now there's a model number on it. Didn't have any kind of a manufacturer name, but when I put the model number in, which is a CPRO-800LP, when I put that in on Google, it actually came up with a Vestil, V-E-S-T-I-L. Now I don't know if he bought that from another source that put their name on it, but ultimately, if you go to the Vestil site, V-E-S-T-I-L, you'll see this there, and they actually show it as a chair for manufacturing. You know, it's not touted as an observing chair. It's made more for the workplace. So I thought it would be interesting to do a comparison between the chair Tom gave me and the observing chair that I've had for quite some time. And this one is called a Stardust. And I remember I bought this years ago from Gary Hand at Hands On Optics. And I don't recall what I paid for it. Now, I don't think Hands On Optics is even open anymore. I can't seem to... I did find a website, but didn't see the observing chair. And like I said, I'm not sure if somebody else owns it. And I really don't see much in the way of this chair. But, again, when I was at Vestil's website, I happened to see a chair that looked like this. Instead of a red seat, it was a black seat. And the model number given on Vestil's website was CPRO-600. And it was a spitting image. And again, touted as something to use at the workplace, as a chair to adjust as you're working on things. Doesn't state that it's for observing. But obviously the way these both are designed, you could they're excellent for that. As we continue with this comparison, the Vestil 800LP is always going to be on the left, and then my chair, the 600, will always be on the right. Both of these chairs from Vestil's website is rated at 220 pound capacity. So let's compare seat heights. The 800LP lowest seat height, as you can see here, I have them both set low, is 18¼ inches, and that I measured that. All these measurements I took myself, and that's from the top of the seat to the ground. Whereas the lowest seat height for the 600 on the right is 13�3/8 inches, again from the top of the seat. Next, we'll take a look at the highest seat height. The 800LP on the left is 32½ inches. The 600 on the right is 34¼ inches. Now I want to point out that when I adjusted this one on the left, I went up about as high as I could go without the support that keeps the seat here from hitting the metal. So that's how I got that seat height here, is if I went up any further, then this metal bracket here would start hitting the tubing of the chair, and so I didn't want that. Next, I want to take a look at the base of the feet. And so what we're going to be looking at here is I've got several dimensions. I've got the front to back, which is going to be the widest point of either chair. So we've got what I call front to back, which goes from front to back. That distance between those legs, that's one of them. Then we want the distance across the front, which I'm going to consider as from there to there. That's across the front. What's the maximum spread of that? And then we're going to have across the back, which would make sense. Obviously, we would go from that leg there to there, the widest point across the back. So let's give those dimensions. So the front to back on the 800 LP is 19.5 inches. The front to back on the 600 is 21.25 inches. Across the front on the 800 LP is 12 5/8 inches. The across the front on the 600 is 14.25 inches. And lastly, we have the across the back on the 800 LP as 12 3/4. Across the back on the 600 is 16 3/8 inches. Since we're down low, let's take a look at the footrest. The one that's on the 800 LP is welded. It's solid. It cannot move up or down. It stays out. The one on the 600 is hinged, and you can move it up and down. And as can be seen, they're both totally different as to how the seat adjusts up and down. On the 800 LP, you have an infinitely amount of adjustment up and down within the range of that chair. On the 600, as you can see, the only adjustments you have are at each one of these crossbars. And I've checked those. The average center to center on these crossbars is 2 1/8 to 2 3/16 spacings. Now the question becomes, which one is better? It's going to be a matter of taste. I've had this so long, this Stardust, which we're now calling the 600 because they're both shown from Vestil. I really like this. These increments have always worked out great for me, and I think overall this has to be a more solid way of doing this, because the chair is locked onto this. It's not necessarily locked, but it's hooked onto this, and any downward pressure, you'd have to have the failure of the chair, totally failure. Now this, again, being that it adjusts like this, we'll take a close-up later of that range. Could this slip? I don't know. I've used this a couple times. It's worked great. I haven't used it long enough long term, but if I was going to choose one chair versus the other, it would definitely be the Stardust, or as we're now calling it, the Vestil CPRO-600. On the 800 LP, you cannot remove the seat. The seat stays on. The only way you could remove it is if you loosened up and took out this with this rest on there, then you could take it off. But from a standpoint of using it, it stays within the frame of the chair. Now the Stardust, or the 600, as I stated, it hooks on. And so that's how you adjust that. And here's a close-up of the 800 LP, the mechanism that rides on. Get it where you want it, bring it down, and then just push. And we'll take a look later when this seat folds down. What's kind of cool is this notch in here will fit into the notch down here on both sides, and that's what will stow the seat away and keep it from sticking out, and you can use that for storage. Here on the 600, you can see how this rests on these large diameter pegs here that come out, and it has a through bolt, or it's got this to where it goes across side to side, not just anchored to this, very rigid. And then all one's got to do is go like that. Here we're taking a look at the construction of the bottom of the chairs, the 800 LP versus the 600. 600 is much more sturdily built. Everything is just heavier, more robust, and I'll just state it right now, my favorite between these two is going to be the Stardust, the 600. Much better chair, heavier. That's not to say this won't hold up. This is heavier to pick up the whole chair. It's heavier. The 800 LP, considerably lighter. So if that's a consideration, that's something to look at. So from the 800 LP to the 600, quite a difference. Then this has got a nice heavy tubular frame around the edge. You can change the adjustment of the seat. You can pull this further forward here. You can change the stud to put it here so that it doesn't, right now it's got these little rubber type heavy grommets. This actually will give, when you're sitting on it, the way it's set up now, the chair will give a little bit, the seat will, and I like that, so I kept it like that. But again, quite the difference in just the way that seat is constructed. And one other thing I want to point out is you will know if there's going to be moisture that evening, because after sunset, if there's going to be moisture, this seat will collect moisture, I will tell you. Just wipe it off. That's another thing I found that, and I'm sure it's the same with this, very easy to keep clean. I use furniture polish. Wipe down the seat, wipe down the rails of the chair. Very easy to do. Next, we'll take a look at the cushions on the seats. The 800 LP is a softer when you get to the center, whereas the 600 is more rigid. It still works, and personally either one works for me. I don't have a preference. Let's take a look at seat storage. When you fold them up, the 800 LP, as I showed earlier, has this little tab across these two rails, and when you want to store it, you flip this up, you bring it down. Remember I said there was that notch I showed earlier? Then that sits in there just like that, and that keeps it from unfolding on you. And then the last thing you're going to do when you store the seat is you'll fold up the leg, which is like that. And now you can store it up against the wall. You can hang it up wherever you want to do it. Now what's interesting is that that seat rides in this rail that it's made up of that tubing that you see here. And so now it slides up and down in this. Which is markedly different than how the 600 is designed. So now it's time to put the chair away. You want to store it, fold it up. Pretty simple. Take it out of there. And then on the back side here, you'll see this bar that swings out. Simply take that and it hooks here. Bring it back and hook it down. And now that's there. Then all you've got to do is put your leg in and then fold up your footrest. And there you go. Now normally I kept this in my breezeway and I would swing it closed, but I always kept my footrest down. All I did was close it like this and then lean it up against the wall like that. The attached feet on the bottom of the 600 is much larger than the attached feet on the 800 LP. Everything about this 600 is just heavy duty. Here you see the same area on the 800 LP. Tubing size is smaller, larger here, and as I stated, the 600 is a heavier chair, and that may be a consideration that you don't want it that heavy. But as far as I'm concerned, the 600 is a winner, hands down. So what's the importance of an observing chair? Well, whether you're looking at the sun like I am today, or using your telescope, be it a reflector or refractor, and the seat heights will accommodate it, there's nothing that you can compare to being able to sit comfortable, especially when you're doing any kind of, you've got seeing that's going in and out and you're studying planetary detail or anything. You're much more comfortable when you're in a seated position and less strain on your body when you're able to be comfortable observing. And so I highly recommend an observing chair, and the one you choose is totally up to you. Again, either one of these will work just fine. I've got nothing bad to say about the 800 LP, but when you compare it to the 600, in my opinion, I'm a really picky guy. You know, the 600 has to win all the time. But other than that, like I said, I've had limited use of this since I got this from my buddy Tom, the 800 LP, but it should service you just fine. And if you're very picky like me, get the 600. Now if you go to Vestil's website, you'll see that they manufacture lots of different items. Again, that's why they tout those chairs as more for production, for work use, and not as a observing chair, but they work excellent for that. So taking a look on Amazon's website, the chair my buddy gave me, the 800 LP, is $232. Now if we take a look at Amazon's website, the Stardust, which is the equivalent of the Vestil 600, we see that it is $288, which I'm not surprised that it is more. And like I said, it costs more, but in my opinion, that's the one that I would get if you really want something heavy duty. Back to Vestil's website, if we take a look, we'll see the 600. Gives you information on that. And then we go down here to the 800 LP. Gives you information. And they're saying the 800 LP weighs 16 pounds, whereas the 600 weighs 22 pounds. And here we see that their address and phone number. They're out of Angola, Indiana. Now I found this online doing some research. The Stardust, which is also the Vestil 600, I do remember it being a hot product on Sky and Telescope.